A new court deadline for Donald Trump today. The former president's legal team is due to hand over a brief to the Supreme Court on Trump's presidential immunity claims ahead of arguments next month. Meanwhile, we are following several developments in Trump's other legal fights, including the New York hush money case and the Georgia RICO case. Let's bring in NBC News justice reporter Ryan Riley, legal analyst and trial attorney Kelly Hyman, and former federal prosecutor Temidayo Agengo-Williams. Ryan, what are we watching for in today's brief as the Supreme Court gears up for the presidential immunity arguments?
Yeah, so we're a little bit more than a month out from those oral arguments in the Supreme Court, and they have that brief due today sort of outlining their arguments for presidential immunity. Now, infamously, in the lower court, in the appeals court, Donald Trump's lawyers really argued for a really broad definition of immunity here. You know, essentially that the president could assassinate a political rival, ordering SEAL Team 6 to do so, and that he could only be prosecuted if he was first impeached by, you know, of course, the House and as well as the Senate, and convicted there. So a really broad outline is what they're arguing there. I wouldn't expect them to make that argument in their actual court filings that they filed at the Supreme Court here, but I think that that's what we're going to be looking for during that Supreme Court, sort of pressing them on the outer limits of this presidential immunity claim. But of course, really the big win for Donald Trump here is that the Supreme Court is hearing this at all, because it's really kicked back the trial. Right now, we were originally supposed to be in the middle of Donald Trump's trial in connection with the January 6th attack and his efforts to overturn the election. That was supposed to get underway on March 4th. We were supposed to be a couple weeks in at this point, and that's just not where we are because of all of these appeals, including this Supreme Court delay. So they're, you know, ultimately the earliest probably this case could potentially be held, if it does get held before the presidential election, would probably be somewhere in the August to September range, provided that the Supreme Court finds that the president isn't immune across the board, Anna.
Okay, so Kelly, as we await the arguments next month, do you expect Trump's team to kind of lay all their cards on the table in this brief they're filing today?
I think they're going to hold something back. I think their main argument is the fact that he has this absolute immunity, that he can do whatever he wants when he was president. But I think it's also key to think about, was he acting in his official capacity while giving the speech, or was it like a political rally? And so he wasn't actually filling his presidential duties at the time. I think that's going to be an important issue for the Supreme Court to make a determination on that.
How is Jack Smith going to poke holes in the Trump immunity arguments? And Temidayo, what do you see as the stakes here?
I think the stakes here is all about the question of delay, because I think what former President Trump's team is likely to do is try to get the Supreme Court to send this back to the trial court for some further finding, which is an option here. For example, Judge Chutkan said there's no immunity at all. So she's done. And she specifically said, I'm not going to answer the question that Trump wants me to answer, which is whether there's an outer perimeter, so some kind of lesser immunity that he could be outside of or could be within. The Supreme Court could say, Judge Chutkan, I want you to decide that question that you chose to skip over, and could send that back. And at that point, that question and that decision could then run its way again through the appellate court and then back up to the Supreme Court. I think at that point, there would certainly be no trial before the election.
Delay, delay, delay. That's been the name of the game all along. And Ryan, let's talk about the New York hush money case, because the judge in this case, Juan Merchan, has now rejected attempts by Trump's team to limit testimony in the trial. And he says Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal can all testify. What more do you have on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to be sort of a rehash of 2016. We're going to have to all remember that time, you know, almost 8 years ago now, when all this sort of went down. Another interesting component of the ruling that the judge made is that the jurors aren't going to hear directly the tape from Access Hollywood, in which Trump made those derogatory comments, just to sort of remind you about what he could do as a celebrity in terms of sexually assaulting women and getting away with it. That's not something they're going to hear directly, but it is something that it will probably be referenced, because a lot of this was in relation to those comments. The allegation here essentially from prosecutors is that they were so worried about those comments and the impact that they would have on the 2020 election, specifically, you know, with female voters, especially, that they were wanted to hush the people who alleged that they had sexual relationships with Donald Trump in the past. And that's really at the heart of all of this.
And so, Temidayo, Trump has called both Cohen and Stormy Daniels liars. That was his argument for trying to bar their testimony. What do you make of the judge's decision?
I think overall, the prosecution did very, very well here. I mean, speaking as a former prosecutor, what you want to be able to do is to tell your complete story, have witnesses that are providing a full narrative to the jury. And if you're a defense lawyer, what you want is to strip the prosecution of its ability to tell that story. You don't want more witnesses in. You don't want more evidence in. Here, the judge basically said the prosecution can tell its complete story. It can have the witnesses who are going to come. And yes, you can always impeach a witness. You can challenge them. You can cross-examine them, but they're going to get to be on the stand. So across the board, I think the prosecution here is excited and ready based on what the judge rules here. And frankly, President Trump lacks some of the defenses he would have had. For example, the advice of counsel. The judge said he can't do that here. So I think if I'm DA Bragg, I'm thinking that an April trial is going to be a good one for me.
There were some restrictions, though, that Judge Merchan put in place here. He says Daniels can't testify about a lie detector test she took in 2018, that there will be exact limitations on McDougal's testimony discussed before jury selection, and that the Access Hollywood tape can't be played at trial. It can be mentioned or referenced at trial. But why these restrictions, Kelly?
The judge made these restrictions because of the fact that he didn't want it thought that it was potentially not relevant to the case as well. So we have to look at this issue of this case and what this case is about. And this case is about business records, the allegations of falsifying business records. And so that's why the fact about Stormy Daniels came in the fact that she received this money, how she got this money as well. But once you go outside those perimeters, there's an argument that it's not relevant, that it's prejudicial to the defendant, and so not to let it in because it could potentially harm him in the case.
I want to move on to Georgia because Trump and 7 co-defendants are now seeking a review of the judge's decision not to disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. So what's next in this one, Temadayo?
So I think, frankly, President Trump is going to want to get some more review here. So he's going to have to ask Judge McAfee there for permission, and then the Georgia Appellate Court would then have to accept the case. I think it's unlikely the trial judge is going to give that permission. I think this case is going to move forward. And frankly, we've already had some recent decisions about pretrial motions, which indicates the judge himself sees this case proceeding to trial and is unlikely to allow further delay.
All right. Thank you both so much. Temadayo Ganga-Williams, Kelly Hyman. Good to have you here.